Hello, my name is Sandy Damon, and I am the Adult Program Coordinator for the Pine Bush Library. Today we are speaking with Bill J. Wiand about UFOs and other phenomenon. Hello, Bill. Please introduce yourself to our patrons.
Okay, my name is Bill, and I'm a Pine Bush area resident. I've lived here a long time. I moved up here from Rockland County because Rockland County taxes were starting to scream at everything that we were made. So we came up here and found a unique situation on the energy and the things that go on, and I was very happy about being here. So it has changed over the years. If you been around for 20 years or so, you notice that the town has changed, the energy's changed, the stores have changed, the world has changed. So
that's for sure.
And that's where I am.
Okay. So, how should we address you?
I've been called wizard, I've been called reverend, I've been called doctor because I do have a PhD in metaphysics. But you can call me Bill, you can call me anything you want. It's
just not late to dinner.
Not late to dinner.
Okay. All right, Bill. So let me ask you this. Why Pine Bush with all of this UFO stuff?
That's always been a big question on why do people move here? Why is there so many different Buddhist communities in the area? Why at night, if you're up on a mountain and you look out in the valley, do you see lights popping up from the ground and things changing? It has a lot to do with the energy of the area. And the energy flows through, if you listen to the Star Wars thing, there is something called the common energy on everything that's around. If you study metaphysics, religion, you study earth energies, if you learn to be a dowser, if you're looking for water, how does a well driller find the place to drill the well? Because if he doesn't get water when he drills it down, he's got to drill another well, and if the cost is so high, it's the energies that are here. There's a common calmness and peacefulness about the valley. Sometimes we don't see it because we're not attuned to that. We're not aware of our surroundings. We don't know that the trees are talking to us, that there's gnomes and fairies and all of these other things. And so when the energies came here, the people got attracted to that. The reason that there's lights in the ground and the mountain is quartz, the ridge is quartz. So anytime you smash or push on quartz, it causes a electrical effect, which causes a light to bloom. It's like having the wintergreen. What are those things?
Oh, the mints?
The mints, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If
they
you
burst in your
right,
mouth.
If you go in front of a mirror and it's dark, you can see that it'll be a green light that happens. And quartz is the same way. And so as things get vibrated, this energy comes out. And I think that affects people. It affects the animals. It affects the whole valley. And supposedly when the astronauts were flying over the over the ridge, they could look down and actually see the flashes of light and the things.
Wow.
I live on the mountain, and I have windows that are casements, so they fold out, and I see the lights in the summertime. You see lights in those windows that are flashing, and it's coming from the earth. So the earth is always moving, and these little tiny tremors cause these issues. And I think that for some reason there's portals, there's areas in Pine Bush or the surrounding area where it's easy for them to come and go. If you look at a lot of the movies, they have portals that go in. Stargate, they had a thing. So we can assume that because these people are from, or I call them people, because these entities are from another dimension, another time, another planet, another portion of space, that they can travel more freely. So, and I know our government is working on that, so that hopefully someday you'll be able to go to Mars.
I'm going. I know that there have been many sightings, as you said, but I just want to backtrack for 1 second. So everything has an aura, an energy aura.
Everything is made up of energy, okay, and they have every tree, everything has an aura. Every piece of
Every living thing.
that doesn't have to be living.
What about a book?
Book has an aura. Why do you think when you go into a bookstore that book calls out to you? You reach up and you take that book.
Okay.
You come into the library. You're looking for a book to read. How do you know which one? It's the one that calls to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can interact with the books, you'll see that it tells you which one you should read first. And sometimes, if you read a book, you don't have to start at the first page. You open up the book and you'll start to look inside, and because that's where you're told to go.
The meat of the book.
Right. It's the thing that's in there.
Okay. All right. Wow. So, have there been many sightings here by people in the area? And when were the most? How far back were these sightings, and where?
Sightings have been going all over. Farmers are out a lot of times to take care of their animals at night, and they get worried. So we've heard stories about dairy farmers that see the lights in the field at night, and then the cows are out, so they go out to check on the cows. But nothing is. Most of the time, they don't see anything other than lights. So there's a lot of activity that happens not only at night, but happens during the day. There's a lot of sightings that. The majority of the sightings that were investigated are ones down towards Montgomery, right at the Route 52 and the Albany Post Road. Now there is now it's an orchard, it's the Angry Orchard or thing. But before it was built up, people would go down there and sit and watch for these lights that would come in and go into the ground, and then they would come up and take off and go out of the ground. And there's a cemetery that's down on Route 52 that seems to be very active with paranormal stuff, but not only paranormal stuff. There was a researcher who actually said that there was something buried in the ground, and he had magnetometers and all these other scientific instruments to measure the energy that's down there. And so there was a whole, like an army of people who spent a lot of time down there. And if you were those McMansions, the new houses that are on 52, across the street from there, there was a farm. And if you look, nothing grows there. And there was a family that tried to grow some, I guess it was bok choy or something, and it didn't pan out. But there's supposedly a pond in the back, and someone saw a multicolored polka dotted alien come out of the water down there.
Wow.
So
wow.
That's one of the stories that are going on. And if you're going, we'll say heading towards Albany Post Road, as you come down that hill, there's a field on the right, and supposedly a young lady did see little green men in the field. So there's been a lot of stories about things that were seen, things that were not necessarily photographed, but the meat packing plant that was down there.
Yep, Walden packing.
That caused, there was a lot of activity around there, so that people think that there may be a portal where the ships come in and out, because they would go behind the thing and then disappear.
Well, I will tell you, and I can't tell you who it was because he'll get mad at me, but this person was going past the Jewish cemetery with a friend, and they saw something in the sky over the cemetery. They stopped, and it was oval in shape, and it had lights on it, and they got out and they're looking at it, and it started to move, and they jumped back in the car and they tried to follow it, but it took off. Of course, I did ask him what he was smoking or drinking, but he swears they saw this object in the sky.
I've heard a lot of stories, very similar stories, people driving on 52 by there, and this thing appearing over their car, and the lights, the no noise. One of the things with the group that we have, the talk about people, interacting with some of the things go on down there. I can remember my sighting of the large UFO that flew around the valley, the big triangular shape. The wife and I were going on 52 to go to the bowling alley, and we saw it off in the distance, and it came around, and it came over the car, and I was driving, and she said she saw it, and it had a red thing on the bottom, and she told me to stop, and I told her no, because I knew what it was, so we went bowling, that was it. But I can remember seeing that, so there's a lot of activity was going on down there, and there's something about a portal, that's what they talk about. And sometimes portals are from ley lines that cross. Ley lines are energy lines that go around the world, and they're, if you're a dowser, you can actually measure them. Sometimes you can sense the energy that there, and it's very, very, in England, it's a big thing. They don't, the hedges sometimes don't grow where the ley lines are. And there are things about the churches in the Poughkeepsie area, how they're all built on the same ley line. And supposedly Benjamin Franklin talked about the energies in Poughkeepsie areas.
Well, you mentioned to me, not today, but that Linda Zimmerman said that there's been sightings from 100 years ago.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a long time ago.
Well, there's been sightings, it seems like it's been forever.
True.
And it's not just here, but it seems that there's a lot of sightings here that are, that go along with not only sightings, but contact. And that's the big debate on, because if you see a light in the sky, what is that light in the sky? You can watch the space station go over, and you see it as a bright light. And if you didn't know what it was, you would say, oh, it's a UFO. You can go out at night and see a streak in the sky, or you see something that goes across the sky and then makes a right angle turn and goes someplace else. Our satellites don't normally do that, but I'm sure that we have some kind of things. And anything that's bright, or anything that's large enough, will reflect the light from the sun, even though the sun is maybe not on the other side of the Earth, but it's it's up so that the angle gets right. So we don't know what the lights in the skies are. And Linda Zimmerman, she's a local author, and she has a lot of books, and she does a lot of research on the paranormal and the UFOs. So.
Yeah, she's very interesting. Yes. Okay. Tell us about the underground UFO installation on Route 52 that I've heard about in gossip.
Well, there's talk that there's these shapes, saucers, whatever, go in and out of the ground. They go in the ground, disappear.
Where?
There's where the McMansions are. Before those houses were built on 52, there's a big field in the back, and people said, because we would sit down there on our side of the road and watch for all these things, the lights would come over and just actually go down and into the ground, and then you would see lights fly up and out. So apparently they don't have to have a hole to go into. They don't have to have anything in there. And there's sounds that happen on if you're sitting down there at night, you'll hear sounds that happen, like there's underground machinery going on, and there's other things that are
really
moving, and so it's a it's there for the people if you want to to go down and see. One of the things you have to remember about going out looking at UFOs, when you pull on the side of the road, you have to have your tires completely off the road. Normally, if the police come by and stop, they were very good to our group. They said they come down, they check, they said just don't let anything get off the side of the road. But there's been a lot of movie people that came up and took movies and did Ancient Aliens had a show with stuff. So there's a lot of activity that goes on. It's just that it's not well known because it's difficult to believe.
Well, but has the government come in and tested the soil, dug holes, whatever they would do?
Oh, remember when they were going to put the super collider in?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well they surveyed the Route 52 from Newburgh to the top of the mountain. They surveyed all of the information. They did drill wells because they were going to put a tunnel at the top of the mountain and go down to the tunnel. The tunnel that's going to go all the way out to 52 because the it was not just something that was going to go at Newburgh, it was going to actually be the whole valley. So when they did all of that information, where I live on the mountain, I saw a map that they made, and they had X's on the houses they were going to take.
Oh.
And then they had a different kind of symbol on the houses they were going to keep for the workers that were there. So, but that project got knocked off, and it went down to Texas. It got started in Texas, but it was never completed. So that, because they were worried about whether or not they were going to make a black hole and destroy the world.
Oh, okay. So that answers my question about the underground UFO installation, but is the government researching any of the sightings, any of the quote abductions, unquote, any of the stories, any of the sites?
Well, I have written down as, how can this go on with no one knowing? And it's all in the name of national security. In the UFO group, we did have people who came into the group. Since it was an open forum, you didn't have to do anything. And they would come in, and we would know that they weren't part of the group. They were not just your average UFO investigator. They, by their clothes, their demeanor, their shoes, you could recognize that they were not local people.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the issues that happened to the group is there was a lot of conspiracy theories that went on, because that's what we discussed at the group, whether or not the government was involved in the abduction phenomenon, because there were certain groups of abductees that would come in and they would talk about it, and they remember seeing people in uniforms standing around with the aliens. So whether or not the government was actually involved, I don't think that there was government people sighted during different times on Route 52, and there was talk about there's a engineering company, a military engineering company on Route 17K.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little
the
building.
Army engineers, the Army Corps of Engineering.
Yes, and there was a lot of, at certain times, there was a lot of military people around there. So there was a lot of activity, and people in the group got very paranoid about conspiracy theories, and phones were thought to be tapped. And the funny part is, if you can remember a real phone with the black phone, when I first moved to where I'm at now, we had a 5-party line.
Wow, 5-party. Woof.
Yes, and it was very hard to get on the phone. But as time went on, we got the people would talk about being talking on a phone and having sounds come on. Especially the UFO people stopped talking on the phone because they thought that the government was listening, and there was a fear of we supposedly might know something that the government wants, or the government has knowledge of, and so they would watch us and stuff. And people got pretty paranoid in a group about that.
Well, so that leads me into something else. That leads me into something. Is there a type of reciprocal agreement between alien governments and the U.S. regarding abductions, etc.? Because I have heard there were. Can you tell me about that?
There are. There's conspiracy theory about Eisenhower. When Eisenhower was at someplace in Palm Beach, he had to go and leave where he was at and had to go get the tooth filled or something, but he disappeared for a couple of days, and actually he was supposedly out at Edwards Air Base, and he had met with 2 different types of aliens. The first group of aliens were what we call the Nordics. Those are the human-looking, blonde-haired group that talked to him and said that they would give us information and stuff that we needed, but we would have to give up our atomic bombs. And Eisenhower said no, because it would decrease the security of the United States or something. So we didn't get anything from them, but a few days later he met with the Greys, which are the small gray-looking ones. So they promised to give us all kinds of things and weapons and all of this stuff if they could take cattle and humans for experimentation, and they would be returned unharmed. So that he apparently signed an agreement for 50 years that they could do that. And I found out later on about about that agreement from someone from Australia who came to one of our meetings, a lady who told me that that's what she knew, that they had the agreement and that the abductions would stop really soon. And it was within a couple weeks that everything seemed to die down. So apparently it died down because the agreement was over. But if you, his granddaughter, Eisenhower's, I think it's her great-granddaughter, she says that treaty is renewed every 10 years.
So they're still abducting cows and people.
Well, it's not as, I don't think it's as prevalent, and I think they've actually worked on their technique on how to do this, where they don't leave fingerprints or burn marks or anything around. So it's interesting that, you know, it supposedly did happen, but there was a lot of people. I've met a lot of people. My PhD thesis was on the spiritual changes of UFO abductees, and so I interviewed a lot of people around the world about what the abduction meant to them and why it happened and all of this stuff. And the big question is, why me? And then what happens to me after it's over?
Right.
You know, it's like,
once I'm back home.
yeah, it's and there's a lot of interesting stories that came out. Most of the stories had the same type of thing. They were told reuse, recycle, that type of stuff. Stop eating beef, because beef was not only bad for you as a human, but it was also bad for the earth because of the methane that was going on. So all of these recycle things. This was before it became a good thing. Now it's like the carbon. They were told, we're going to have to stop, or else we're going to destroy the earth.
Right, we're told to make a smaller carbon footprint.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and the big issue with that is what they're going to do is if you make a small carbon footprint, your reward is going to be paying more taxes for the ability to do that. And what amazes me is we're going to go all electric cars. Now, where are we going to get the electricity to run all of these cars if our infrastructure won't even support the houses we have and the things? So it's going to be interesting. And this was all brought about by a typical abduction would be you would hear this loud roaring sound in your ears like a train, and it would be it's called phasing. It would sound like it was going around you, and then you would not be able to move, and either you saw something or you didn't see something, or you heard something, and you would wake up and you would remember being at a different place, remember being told things. Some experiencers were sitting in front of a computer console and were watching sometimes bad things happening to the earth. Sometimes they were taught different things and how to fly, how to do all of these other things. Sometimes you went to a temple where the atmosphere was red and everything was red and everybody was in robes and gowns, and you went into this temple and learned things, but you can't remember what you're supposed to learn. So it was hard because you realized something was going on, but you don't know why or when it's supposed to take effect or what's going on. It's like the book Communion. Mm-hmm. It's a local book from Whitney Strieber. He was taken from his place up in Napanoch many times, so that
Many times.
many times. So one of the big things that comes out of that, if you remember, Men in Black, they talked about the what's up with anal probing.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the joke came from, because that was the first, and as far as I know, the only abductee who mentioned something like that. I know they did medical treatments on people. People talk about having marks, and where they used different instruments to do things. They talked about abductions and taking fetuses from people. So there was a lot of strange and odd things that went on for that whole time. But the government probably knows, but who are they going to tell? And,
Right.
And why? Why would they tell anything like that? And if you, at the Operation Blue Book, where they talked about investigating UFOs and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there were some places, sightings that went on in around this area that got into the Blue Book, but they said it didn't affect national security.
Oh,
So it wasn't a problem for
so it
them.
wasn't, yeah, okay.
You know, it wasn't a concern. Well, it wasn't a concern. Someone was abducted, or someone saw a saucer land on a field in Pine Bush. That didn't concern them because it didn't affect the national security. But that's the kind of a halfway thing that they said. So
Well, I always wondered why in space movies or UFO movies, a cow would always be going up into some kind of a spaceship.
there's a couple books out on the cow. It's called Cow Mutilations. They talked about out west. A lot of the cattle were found drained completely of blood,
Right.
and what looked like laser cuttings on it, and they would take certain part of the animals, and the assumption was that they used those for making materials for cloning or making materials for food. Because if you look at any of the movies about the aliens, they have very tiny mouths. So how would they eat? They eat by taking their arms and putting it in a vat of whatever it is and absorb it through their skin, kind of like a frog absorbs water. So
Wow.
but this is there's a lot of books out on different things go, and as you investigate and you search, it's like trying to buy a house that you are looking for in an area that you're looking to have a specific criteria. You might have to look at 100 houses to find one that you like.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you might have to read 100 books in order to find the one that connects you to what you want to be connected to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear ya. All right, so we did speak about the government and the reciprocal agreement supposedly with Eisenhower from Edwards Air Force Base in '54, and that was called the Greada Treaty.
Yes, there's supposedly it was a treaty that was signed by Eisenhower, and I believe it's his granddaughter has come out and said that treaty is renewed every 10 years.
Right.
And if you look that up on the on Google, you'll find that there's a lot of stories about that. And Google can be your best friend or it could be your worst enemy, because if you start, well, say you sit down and your TV's not working good, so you start to do some research. The next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
and you're completely lost in all of the information that you have. So it can really bother you.
Well, and if you do want to look it up, the treaty is spelled Greada, Greada Treaty, and it was in around 1954, and Eisenhower was the president. So in case you want to look that up, that's how you would find it. Okay, let's go on to, is paranormal activity and UFOs related, and are UFOs related?
The paranormal activity, there's a lot of it that is actually going on in Pine Bush all the time, and there's a lot of books written about the correlation between UFOs and paranormal. What does paranormal mean? We say paranormal is ghostly, shadow people, things that happen that you can't explain, poltergeists, all of those kind of things. And UFOs fall into that kind of category because the aliens, are they interdimensional? In other words, we now think of multi-dimensions on everything the scientists are looking at, how we can go between dimensions. And are they time travelers? Are they tourists, scientists? And if you remember the crystal skull with the, they talked about they were archaeologists. Right. So what are they? Who are they? And with paranormal, I don't know of anybody who does not say that they've seen something in their house or seen something when they go to places. And some people make a hobby of going around and doing paranormal research. They'll go to a cemetery, they'll go to old hospitals, they'll go to things, and if you can feel the energy, you can then do the research to look on things. And it just takes practice to feel the energy. When I was growing up, I thought everybody saw ghosts, everybody saw spirits, everybody heard voices. And as you get older, you find out, ooh, you don't want to say that because they think you're crazy. But it's true. There's so much going on. There's so many different things that you could get interested in. And Pine Bush, you know, you come into the library, there's books on everything. And the more you read, the more you learn.
And the smarter you become.
Yes, and no one can take that smartness away.
That's right.
You know, once you start like a hobby, once you start it, you start, it gets bigger and bigger. And with the paranormal, it can be scary. With UFOs, it can be scary. But there's been the only people who have been harmed with the UFO phenomenon that I know of is South America. And I'm not sure why, but there are people who are harmed, injured, and hurt from that. Though we did have some stories in the United States where the person got under the UFO and they got sunburn or they got radiation burns. If you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind,
yes.
He was sitting in his truck, he looked up, and he got that really bad sunburn.
Right.
That, either the story came about, he got the information about that by listening to these stories, or people, you know, actually got burned by being under a UFO. And there was a group that was, or I think it was 2 women who tried to sue the government because they said that this rocket that they launched from the base came over, and I guess they got burned very, very bad by the exhaust. So, but of course, you know, nope, it didn't happen. There's a lot of things with paranormal and UFOs. You know, what would you say a typical alien looks like? You know, it's we're looking at this gray. They call them grays, but some of them are salmon color. If you look at the book Communion, the front page or the cover of the book has a picture of a alien. That alien is female. That's on the book cover. That got me started in realizing all of the things that happened to me over my life because I saw the cover of the book.
Okay.
So it triggered something, and then the ball started to roll. And I've been involved with aliens and UFOs since I was very young. You know, I've seen aliens. I thought that everybody saw little people. You know, it's like kids, their invisible friend.
Right.
What is an invisible friend? You know, the psychiatrists and psychologists, they all have theories on what it is. They're looking for friendship. But it may be that they're actually seeing something that you can't.
Oh, that's an interesting take on it. You're right.
You know, and that could be what aliens are. They could be interdimensional. They could be just visiting us. Do they have to have a spaceship? No. Maybe they can teleport. Maybe they have one of those things on the ship that they can send it down here and you can just walk around.
Beam me up, Scotty?
Yeah, beam me up, Scotty. That's the whole thing. And that was the joke amongst all of the experiencers, because they want to go back.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes.
That I have never heard.
It's because it's an adventure and it's knowledge.
True.
You know, a lot of them were unhappy with the taking because they say they were violated, you know, because someone took them out of their bed at night. But and then one of the excuses that one of the reasons that supposedly the aliens were allowed to do this is because you made an agreement before you came to this earth from your prior, your prior existence or whatever, that they could do that to you. Nobody knows. It's like past life regression.
Right.
Yeah. That's part of the psychic phenomenon, I think, because you are a total sum of all the lives and all the energies that you've lived. And if you get a DNA test, that just tells you what this body is. Doesn't necessarily tell you what this is up in here or in your heart. So it's an interesting, that would be an interesting take on things.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there any time of the year where the UFO activity is at a higher level?
Whenever it's clear and people are out, and it got to be very, very popular there when people stopped smoking in the house. They would go out on their deck or out on the porch to smoke. And what do you do when you smoke? You look up and you relax. And so when you relax, you start to see things. And a lot of times you'll see a meteor, or you'll see a light go across the sky and move around and do things. Or
so you're seeing things more empirically.
Yes.
You have a broader scope.
Right, because your mind is more relaxed. The encounters, if you have a UFO encounter, there's two types. One is it's a pre-planned thing by them, and the other thing could be just an arbitrary, you're driving on 52 and all of a sudden this light comes above you, and then you have some kind of an interaction, whether it's physical or mental. So it makes it kind of interesting on where in the universe are you at any given time.
Okay. I know that this is going to sound like a strange question, but does and I have a tough time saying this word, extraterrestrial intelligence, ETI, is it confined just to planets, or are they really living amongst us?
Well, depends on what your term of alien or extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial to me would mean not of this planet, but there are, if you look up alien species on Google, you'll find that they talk about any kind of animal or plant that is relocated to someplace else. It's like the pythons in Florida. They don't have to be on their planet. They could be visiting and living on this planet. If you remember the day the Earth stood still, the last one, he interviewed and talked to these people who were here to monitor the things that are going on in Earth, kind of like a newspaper reporter or something like that. So that they could be here. There's also huge ships that are traveling throughout the universe, or the multiple universes, where the whole civilizations are on a ship, and they would just go and travel, and they have all of this stuff.
But are they looking for new planets, or they're looking for a new home somewhere in the solar system?
They may be looking for a place to land and to immigrate to. If there's been a few movies out about alien civilizations coming here and wanting to join our planet. There's been a lot of movies about alien civilizations coming here and wanting to take over the planet and destroy everything that we have. And it's like a scare thing. You don't know. That's why how would the people in Pine Bush, if suddenly on Main Street a group of 5 Klingons or some kind of unearthly looking creature started to walk down the street, what we would do.
I would probably pass out.
It's possible that they could be not friendly, or we would worry about whether or not, if you remember some of the things if they have some kind of virus with them that would contaminate the world, how would we stop that?
Thank you very much for being with us. We're going to take a short break right now. Please stay tuned for part 2.